You know Trey Gowdy because he served as a congressman from South Carolina. He's also a great writer. He has a new novel called The Color of Death. And he's also somebody who's regularly on Fox News. So he's a wonderfully well-known guy. But today, I'm personally speaking, he shares a lot of his soul. Stay with us. We'll be with you in just a moment with Trey Gowdy. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Msgr. Jim Lisante, and Fox News Channel host and New York Times best-selling author Trey Gowdy joins me now. Trey currently hosts Fox News Channel's Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy and the Trey Gowdy podcast on Fox News Audio. Trey served in the United States Congress from South Carolina from 2011 to 2019. He is also an experienced trial lawyer and former state and federal prosecutor. Trey draws heavily from his 2 decades as a prosecutor in his new book, a thrilling fiction book called The Color of Death. The book takes us on the journey of a prosecutor, helping us to better understand our system of law and order. Trey's married to his wife, Terry, for 36 years, and together they're the parents of 2 grown children. Trey is here with us today to talk about his life, his career, his new book called The Color of Death, and the strong faith and the values that matter the most to him. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, Trey Gowdy. Trey Gowdy's with us now. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We talk about his new book, which is The Color of Death. We're going to talk about his time in Congress and just about his life, his faith, and the things that he values the most. Trey, thanks for coming on. Let me start by saying that in college, I got my degree in English literature. High school and college, every novel I could read, I read. Then I gave up on fiction and I said, life is too short. Let me read nonfiction so I can get all the facts out there. And here's a man who's loaded with facts about real life, and he decides to write a novel. I got to ask you, why fiction? What's your hope for using fiction to tell the truth?
You know, the line between fiction and nonfiction is a pretty faint one sometimes. Even the spine of this crime and this fiction novel, I'll put fiction in quotes, it really happened. I really prosecuted the murder of a young mother in a beauty salon. Now, I changed everything else,
Yeah.
but, it has been said that everything in life is a footnote to either Jesus or Socrates. So there's nothing original. Um, I, I I enjoy the liberty of not being fact checked when you write fiction. It's
Right.
hard to be fact checked. I myself read primarily historical fiction. So it really happened. But, I have an author, Stephen Pressfield, I really like, Ken Follett, I really like. Um, they use characters to try to make real events come to life. What was that beautiful book, All the Light We Cannot See? World War II really happened. So you get the best of both worlds with that.
Mm-hmm.
This is fiction. That's the genre. But everything that happened in this book is a realistic accounting of relationships that very easily and most likely have happened.
Trey Gowdy's our guest. And in the book, we get into the heart and mind and soul of a prosecutor, which Trey was for many years. I mention that because one of the things you highlight is that being a prosecutor, because of what you're surrounded by, what you see every day, can cause you to lose your soul, to lose your hope. So moving from the fiction, which is not such fiction, close to reality, how did you, when you were a prosecutor, not lose your soul and not give in to despair?
I'm not sure that I succeeded, to be honest with you. On Mother's Day of 2009, my wife and my mom, who were the 2 biggest influences in my life, sat me down literally on Mother's Day and said, "You have to go do something else."
Wow.
I think my wife could tell that, I was born a little bit cynical, but it had become much worse. My Sunday school teacher asked me to read a book called The Shack, which Yeah, I read it. It's a gruesome, gruesome story about a father that endures the death of his little girl. Um, I know why he wanted me to read it. He thought it would help. The reality, Monsignor, is I had three children murdered in the course of a week. And I go back to the prophet Habakkuk, who, asked God some pretty tough questions. How can you possibly let this happen? So, where I take some comfort is that it's hard to be upset with someone who doesn't exist. So, as long as I am questioning God, it's okay because I still think he exists.
That's right.
It's when I just say, I'm not going to bother with the conversation anymore. I put some light in this book. My wife is the most Christ-like person I know. She not a preacher, never heard her preach a sermon, just the way she lives her life. So I wanted Belle to be kind of like Billy Budd, I guess, in Herman
Mm,
Melville's book, a Christ-like figure.
yeah.
Now, Billy Budd had a flaw. He stuttered. Belle doesn't have any flaws. Not yet, not in book one. It is a struggle. For some people, it drew them closer to their faith, particularly the victims, because they want to believe in the afterlife and
Yeah.
they want to believe that they're going to be reunited.
Yes.
For others like me, you have a long list of questions that you would like to ask if and when you make it to the other side.
Trey Gowdy is our guest. One of the things that has always been a problem for me is trying to explain why some people do embrace what is evil, and everything you're talking about, both in this novel and in the work you did as a prosecutor, involves why people do become the evil people they are. Next week, Bill O'Reilly will be with us and talking about his book, Confronting Evil. Everyone is talking about the evil that would motivate the killer of Charlie Kirk. I just wonder, because you are a person who studies human personality, at what point, because I do believe we come into the world as essentially good and innocent, where do you see us divert? Where does the problem of evil take charge of people's lives? What are the circumstances, as far as you could tell, both as a good writer, but also a well-experienced prosecutor?
Monsignor, I wish I knew. The killer of Charlie Kirk came from, by all accounts, a good family.
Yeah.
He was a straight A student. Isolation, echo chambers, being surrounded by people who don't serve as a moral compass for you, believing ever that hate, violence, murder are the answer to anything. Um, I I prosecuted a man who beat an elderly couple to death with a hammer, which is about the most personal way that you literally the lifeblood is covering him as he is beating this couple who had done absolutely nothing except be kind to him. And so they call psychiatrists to say he was born with a bad brain. I, I, you know, children are born with spina bifida. Children are born with chromosome issues. Can you be born with a bad brain? That's probably above my pay grade. Um, I've seen people come from horrific circumstances and they lived lives of virtue and grace. And I have seen people that were given every gift in the world and they never showed mercy to anyone else. And I go back to the prophet Habakkuk. I don't understand it, but then God's response is going to be, "Where were you when I created everything? Who are you?"
Yeah.
Now, you can ask the question, but you won't understand the answers the way I interpret that book.
The Color of Death is the book that Trey Gowdy has written, and I want to brighten things up a little bit because I'm intrigued by another aspect of faith. Every weekend, I do get to celebrate weddings with couples, and I love it. But I consider marriage to be one of the greatest leaps of faith, because all you know is the past and the dating and the good times, and yet you're making a bet that this person is right for the next 60 to 70 years. So I got to ask you, because you spoke so glowingly about Terry, how did you know back then, before you chose to spend your life with this woman, that she was as good as she is and that she was meant for the long distance in relationship?
Wow. Well, I was one of conservatively 1,000 men who wanted to spend the rest of their lives with her. I mean, she was far and away the most beautiful person that I had ever seen in my life. And, you know, pretty is as pretty does. I know that. But, you can't see the soul. All you can see is the outside. So I actually met her on a dare. One of my friends at church dared me to go introduce myself to her because she was like Aphrodite to all of us. Um, and she is even sweeter than she is beautiful. When people comment on her aesthetics, which is, a gift from God and genetics, but
Yes.
the rest of her is just genuinely good and kind. And the challenge with marriage is the person she married is not the person she's living with right now. So she's had to endure, I mean, 17-year-old men, you could write an entire psychiatric profile of 17-year-old men. That's how old I was when I met her. And she was with me through college and law school. And she watched me sit in the floor and write letter after letter begging people to hire me as a federal prosecutor. And because God has a sense of humor, the Republicans would never hire me. It was a Democrat U.S. attorney who took a chance on me, just because God has a sense of humor, I guess. The Republicans wouldn't interview me, but a Democrat U.S. attorney named Pete Strom took a chance on me. I mean, I remember the look on her face when I said I'm leaving my dream job to run against a 24-year incumbent for district attorney with no backup plan. But I think the beauty of marriage is that if you pick the right person, you are with them through every season of life. And, our kids are older now, so the excitement of what's this child going to turn out to be, it turned out to raise two lawyers. So I apologize to the world for that. I'm not sure the world needed two more lawyers, but that's what they got. And just the wedding vows seem so superficial. I remember going to Tim Scott's wedding about a year ago, and first time he got married for the first time at age what 58. Um, and the vows, if you listen to them literally, in sickness or in health. So I had a health issue about 2 years ago. It's made life very complicated for my wife. I mean, it changed things, but you cannot tell. Her reaction is not one of bitterness or, why do I have to help my husband, walk from the house to the car, which she did for about 3 months. It, I won the lottery when it comes to spouses, and because of God's grace, it's not because I deserved it. I got friends that were much better people that deserved someone like her. I think sometimes God gives you what you need and not what you deserve, and that is grace.
Now, you two have produced, and I want to get that right. I know one of them is Abigail, and
Yes, sir.
the other one is Watson. These kids, aside from being lawyers, are also, from all accounts, really, really good people. What did you guys, as parents, do right to raise these wonderful kids?
Well, in my wife's case, unconditional positive regard, unconditional love.
Okay.
Um, I tell my kids, even to this day, no one will ever love you like your mother does.
Well,
My mother's birthday is today. I sent flowers to my mother. They're the first to love you. They're the last to leave you. You're the theologian, not me, but it is not lost on me that Jesus did say, my father, why have you forsaken me? But he never asked his mom, why have you forsaken me? Because she never did.
oh,
She was there to the end.
good.
Moms are, no one will ever love you as much as your mother. What I gave them, I think, was the freedom to believe whatever they want to believe. You just have to be able to explain it to me.
Okay.
I, I don't I don't really have a lot of political conversations with my children. Um, but when they want to bring something up, I quiz them like I would a lawyer. You have to tell me that you have explored every other possible outcome, that you know all known facts, and that you have reached a reasonable conclusion. And if we disagree, that's fine. That's the variety of life. but I'm gonna cross-examine you. And now they're both getting pretty good at doing it themselves. So I I think the thing I'll say about my kids, and maybe it's their generation, no discrimination. They don't see color. They don't
Mm.
see gender. They, you know, I think back to my parents' generation, or maybe before that, where the South was deeply segregated.
Yeah.
My daughter on a Friday night, our house would look like the United Nations. And it was the most natural thing in the world. And so they don't have a bone in their body that is um that tries to judge people based on immutable traits.
Ray, let me ask you, a lot of parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles watch a program like this, listen to a program like this, and the struggle they always go through, and they raise it with me, certainly as a pastor, is I love my faith, I love Jesus, and I want to pass on the values of my faith to my children. Is there a particular way, right or wrong, to do it?
Yes. Show me a sermon. Don't tell me one, show me one.
Okay, good.
Um, I I think there was a line in my book where the prosecutor said, I have learned more about God or the love of God from a woman of color who works in a diner than 1,000 sermons. I think we want to see authenticity. I can cross-examine Monsignor anything in the world except an authentically lived life. I have no questions for that. Never won an argument with an authentically lived life. My wife would kill me in court because I cannot cross-examine someone who lives out what they believe. So I would tell parents less on the beating of the scriptures in their head. You know, I had a guy that paid me $1 for every Bible verse I knew. I memorized. I became rich. I know more Bible verses than my wife does. I was asking her the other night, who were Adam and Eve? What was the name of their third son? Can you name all of Noah's sons? Who was the 13th disciple? Who replaced Judas? She doesn't know any of that.
Yeah.
What she does know is love your neighbor, pray for those that persecute you. So she lives it. I'd rather see a sermon than hear one, is what I would tell parents and grandparents.
Trey Gowdy's our guest. Color of Death is the book, and I want to go to another aspect of your life and career. I'm in a district that used to be represented by Peter King, and he's just one of many Congress people I've had the privilege of knowing. But these guys, they stay for a long time, and I think only age pushed Peter to finally retire. Trey, people fight to get where you got in Congress, and yet Trey decided to choose another path for himself. I'm just intrigued by that. Like very few people walk away from a position of authority. Uh, why? How? Did it hurt? Was it easy? What went into that decision?
It was easy. The real hard thing to do was to stay the fourth term. I was going to leave after three, but Tim Scott, who was my closest friend in politics, one of my closest friends in all of life, he will preach my funeral,
Oh,
assuming he's not the one that kills me. And even then, I'd probably still have him because he would do a really good job. He sat me down and said, "This is a lonely town, and will you please stay one more term?" And so I did. But I knew, number one, I didn't like it. When I compared it to the courtroom, there are no rules, there's no judge, there are no referees, and the jury only meets every 2 years. And I could see how I was helping people in a courtroom. I could never see it in Congress. And so I needed an honorable exit, is what I call it. Um, I don't miss it at all. I still have friends in the Senate. If I like am curious as to what's going on, I have a friend that's a CIA director. Oh, Kevin McCarthy is one of my closest friends. He reached the pinnacle of the House, and he is happier now than he was in politics. So I want to. I would tell young people to pursue a significant life,
mm,
not successful, significant.
yeah.
And if you can tell me how being one out of 435 of something is significant, I'm all ears. But I was the chairman of two committees. I, I was I nominated two speakers. I gave the closing speech when one speaker retired, and it still wasn't enough. So you tell me how you're going to change the world in the House, and I'm all ears, but you're better off teaching, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I thank you for saying that. In the 1990s, I was asked to run for Congress, and I went to talk to Cardinal O'Connor, who said to me, A, you might lose your soul. And he said, you're going to compromise in ways that are going to hurt your ultimate destination in life. Don't do it. And I think he was wise. I also told him that I thought I would probably lose. It was against Carolyn McCarthy. And he said, well, if you're going to run and lose, don't take that chance either. But I got to ask you, too, because you dropped a beautiful comment before about your beautiful mom. But when you look back at mom and dad, uh, best thing they did as parents, mom, we know, gave the love. What did dad do right for you?
We watched 30 minutes of television a week,
Oh,
not a day, a week. So my father made me read. I say he made me. You can't make somebody read, but you can take away all their other options. I mean, I spent my time reading the encyclopedia. I would wait for the Reader's Digest abridged books to come out. I
hmm.
would read the dictionary, trying to learn words because my father had he was a pediatrician. He was a baby doctor. He just didn't think television was good for us. And he was probably right. So a lot of sports, um, my father, if I had a nickel for every time he said, return something better than you found it. He is probably the reason that I was elected solicitor because of how many kids he took care of and how hopelessly devoted those parents were to him. If you do something for someone's kid, they never forget it. The number of people that voted for me because my father was their doctor is no doubt what propelled me. I would have lost that race but for him.
That's amazing. So you had great parents and they taught you a lot. You tried to pass it on to the next generation. I just got to ask you that because I'm intrigued by it. How do you feed your faith now?
I remember that verse which Soren Kierkegaard then wrote a book on about working out your salvation with fear and trembling.
Mm,
And I, I I ask myself, are the teachings of Christ worth following even if there's no reward at the end? In other words, do you believe it enough or are you just seeking life everlasting? Do you just want to live forever? Or do you really believe that these teachings are the way to a significant life on earth? And so most of my prayers, I always tell Tim, we get asked to pray or say the blessing, you do it. I remember the parable. The guy that prayed in private turned out better than the guy that prayed in public. So I'm gonna have a really raw, frank conversation with God. It's not gonna be flowery. It's not gonna bring anybody to tears. I, at the end of every night, I thank him if I have not had vertigo that day because that's the medical condition that I have. I thank him for keeping my parents, my wife, my children alive, and I ask him for wisdom. That's one of the few things in the Bible that if you ask for, he says he'll give you more of it. I don't ask for money. I do want my wife and children protected. I'm grateful that I still have my parents because a lot of people my age do not. Kevin McCarthy and John Ratcliffe just lost their moms within the last year. John's now lost both his parents. Kevin's lost both his parents. I'm I'm really fortunate that I was able to send flowers to my mom today. So I do thank God for that.
yeah,
But there will come a day where I cannot, and there'll come a day where when my kids can't send me something on my birthday. And you have to be at peace with that. And the best way to be at peace with that is to have lived a life that you don't regret.
Let's go finally. Last question, I promised. Back to the book, The Color of Death, about a prosecutor. And I'm talking to a man who's been a prosecutor. The first interview like this I did over 30 years ago was with the film director, Frank Capra, who was a friend. And Frank used to say both in It's a Wonderful Life and in his real life, he'd say illness is not anywhere near as great a burden as the illness of discouragement. You've admitted during this interview, and you kind of talk about it in the book too, that when you see enough evil, it can break your heart, it can break your spirit, cause you to lose your soul. So Trey Gowdy, not just as congressman or author, but as human being, Christian, how do you avoid discouragement? How do you not give in to discouragement? What keeps hope alive in you?
Surround yourself with light.
Mm.
Marry light. Have friends that are made of light. The coworkers that I have gravitated to the most are nothing like me. They are light. So if you were to go through my life and look at the people I am closest to, they are constant, nonstop sources of what I am not. So it's the opposite of this echo chamber that Tyler Robinson found himself in, where he wanted to be validated and ratified. I want I want to surround myself with optimism and hopefulness. And I know that in the end, the light wins. So my cynicism is not going to trump their light. And I don't want them to be like me. I want to be like them. I just can't unsee what I've seen. But they're right. The light does win in the end. In life, in scripture, the light does win.
I want to thank Trey Gowdy for being with us. You know, before the interview, I asked my business manager on the parish here, what do you think of him? He said, I never fail to watch him on television. He said, because he's a fair-minded man who tries not to judge people. He has an open mind. He said, even though, like me, he said, I'm a Republican and a Christian. He said, I'm far less tolerant than Trey is, and he sees all the possibilities. It's certainly made clear in the book, but also in your whole life. Trey, you're a great gift to us, and I just wish that there could be much more people, many more people in public life who would approach public life the way you have. And you are, even though you talk about surrounding people with light, you are for a lot of us. You are that light. And thank you for being that.
Thank you, Monsignor. And I'm very glad that you did not run for Congress. I think you are exactly where God wants you to be.
Thank you for that. Thanks for being with us on Personally Speaking. If you need to reach me, you can do that at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer of Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovitz. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.